Good evening, everybody. Could you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the April 11th Town Board meeting. Just let you know that there's a couple of exits behind you. There's an exit over here in this direction. Please put all your phones on vibrate. I make a motion to come out. Oh, sorry. Kathy, can you please call the roll?
I will, thank you. Councilman Cypress?
Here.
Councilman Larka?
Here.
Councilwoman Lewis? Here. Councilman Mazzata?
Here.
Supervisor Durante?
Here. Thank you. I make a motion to come out of executive session with no action taken.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have a public hearing. I make a motion to open this public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's Arbor Creeks Farm LLC special permit request 400-410 Route 22, tax number 78-1-16. So I believe Stefan. If you could introduce yourself and let us know.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Carlson, and I'm representing myself for the Arbor Creek Tree Farm. Our property is located at 400-410 Route 22. We had purchased the property about a year ago, and the current use of the property, it's a mixed-use piece of property where there is a combination of residential and commercial use on the front half of the property that butts up against Route 22. The property is currently zoned as residential multifamily, and it's approximately 9.87 acres. The front part of the property is roughly about 2.7 acres, and we're proposing to use the back portion of the property, which is roughly a little bit over 7 acres. There are two different types of wetlands on the rear portion of the property currently. There is a New York State DEC wetland in the middle of the property, and then on the east as well as the south side of the property, there are two locally regulated wetlands. We are proposing to use that rear portion of the property in between in the wetland buffer areas for a tree farm where we'll be planting nursery stock that will sit in the ground for a number of years, probably between 8 and 10 years. And at that point, we'll be able to harvest the plants and use them for my landscape contracting business. It's for my personal use in my business. We are not proposing to do any retail activities out of the site. It's primarily just for our own use. And we've been through the planning board for the last couple of months. We started early on in the spring, and we've had a couple revisions to the plan with discussions from the professionals, the planning board, as well as neighbors. And what you see in front of you now is the last revision that we've had. We were referred to the town board, I believe last year, and we're in front of the town board now for the Arbor Creek Tree Farm.
Anybody have any questions?
I have no questions.
So this is a public hearing. If you'd like to speak on behalf of what Stefan's doing, please come up to the mic, introduce yourself, and one at a time now. Thank you.
My name is Michael Maffei, 1603 Holly Stream Court. I'm here representing the Holly Stream Board of Managers as Vice President. Back in January, at the last public hearing at the Planning Board, we had three concerns. Number one was the way the hearing was notified to our neighbors. Most of us in Holly Stream never got a notification, and we were pretty displeased about that. But that's water over the dam. The notification this time around seemed to go pretty well. Our number 2 issue was noise. And I think the planning board in their recommendation to you has put some restrictions on the project to try to curtail some of the noise. They've limited the hours between, I think it's 8 to 6, and no weekend hours. So that's a big plus. We were happy to see that. Our third concern was the gravel road going up through the property. The original plan had it going up right along our property line. And we had some concerns, once again, with noise. We have some neighbors pretty close to where that road is going to be. Mr. Carlson did agree to move that road to the center of the property, which is a big plus. However, we noticed just recently, in looking at the plan, that since then he has added a spur coming back towards Holly Stream, probably within 25 feet of our property line, and about 80 feet from a couple of our residences, our back patios. So we're asking for that to be looked at again. Maybe go back to the original plan where the road goes up through the middle and then it comes off towards us at Holly Stream. So whatever we could do to do that, we would appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan, at any point you would like to talk, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, as Mr. Maffei had said, we had met a couple of times to address these concerns. And I know also additional neighbors were concerned of the possibility of noise. When the project gets started and the property gets developed into the proposed tree farm, the activity when we're doing that work will have a noise component. We've put in working hours between 8 and 6, Monday through Friday, to limit any disruption to the neighborhood during the weekends when most people are probably enjoying their property outside. But as the tree farm, after the tree farm is established, there's going to be very little activity on the property. The trees will be in the ground. We're proposing to mow the grass in between the trees either 1 or 2 times a year. When it would be 2 times a year, I think it would be in the juvenile state of the trees, because we don't want the grass to outrun the trees and shade the trees. So at that point, the grass might be cut twice a year. After the trees are established and they're above 12, 24 inches, then the grass has no concern to us, so we'll probably go back to an annual once a year mowing in the fall. The gravel road that Mr. Maffei was speaking of, we did move it back towards the center of the property. Logically, it makes sense for us. Originally, when I had drawn this plan, and something I failed to mention, we had used this property in the past for a similar operation, but then we pulled out of it back in 2017, 2018 for a variety of different reasons. That was always our path along that northern border of the property. I had no, that's just where I left it when I was redoing the plans for this application that we're in front of you for now. This spur that still runs towards the north end of that property, I thought would be important to us because 8-10 years down the road, when we are going to harvest these trees, that type of activity is generally done in the early part of the spring or latter part of the fall, and that's when we're experiencing the wet weather that you're seeing outside on a day like today. I thought that gravel road would give us a landing pad that as we dig a tree, we can leave it there and pull it out of there. Is it essential? Is it crucial for the business or for the tree farm? No, but I kind of, ask for some forgiveness on that where that road could stay in place. If it's an absolute deal stopper, it's going to upset somebody, we can do away with it. But I'll defer to the board on that. And
So actually, I have a question. So basically, from seeing the property, you're going to basically kind of just clean it off. You're not digging it up and flattening it out. You're just kind of grooming it to get a lot of the old growth out of there. And then once you plant these trees, like, do you walk around and check them, or, I mean, you're not driving a truck back there to check them, you're walking around?
no, we'll probably end up, just with the original question, there's a minimal amount of grading there. Right now, the place is inundated with different invasives. We have to do some rototilling to uproot the invasives that are on site now. There's no major grading proposed on the project site. Like I said, there is a gravel road that's already there, so we're building off of that. And there's no other big earth moving activities, just basically rototilling and tilling the soil so we can plant our trees. But I would probably, it's hard to say how often I'll be there from the day the first tree gets planted, you know, through an annual season. I would probably say, I was just speaking to one of the residents over at Holly Stream. She had a question about the property, and I said, honestly, I haven't been there that much. I'm not on the property every year. As the trees go in, you know, I might be there once, twice a week, but chances are I'm going to do, as you said, I'll park my truck or vehicle out front and walk up there. And if I am inspecting it, it's literally just going around, poking around, and looking at the trees. As the trees are planted and they're growing, there will be some corrective pruning on them, but it's really a pair of hand shears and a hand saw. There's not chippers and head shears and that sort of thing. It's not that type of operation, because you're basically just doing corrective pruning. If there's a branch crossing another branch, you're taking that off to let the other branch grow. So there's not major tree work that's happening in the operation.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, town board members. My name is Jeannie Frey, and I'm at 51 Guinea Road in Brewster. I'm one of the adjoining property owners to the applicant's property. And one of the things I heard, which I'd like to address first of all, I've been to all the planning board meetings. I've attended each one of those. I've made comments at each one of those. I've written letters. What has been happening during that time at the planning board meetings is that there's been a lot of ambiguities as to what he's actually doing, as to the final plan. And again, it seems like this has changed a little bit since the last time we were at the planning board meeting, and he did get the nod to come up here. So one of the things that he just mentioned here is that he's saying it's 7 acres that he's looking to develop here. And when we were at the planning board last, it was somewhere around 3 acres. Has that changed? Could you address that for me?
No, I probably misspoke on that. The back portion of the property is 7 acres, but as I mentioned, there's 2 different types of wetlands. And then per our discussions, I agreed to leave 66,000 square feet undisturbed at this time. So I think our usable space with this application is going to be 3 acres.
So it is. So it's not going to be the 7 acres.
No, it's what was consistent with the planning board and
Okay.
everything else we spoke about.
And then the other thing that seemed different was the hours, because it seemed like there were extended hours, and now you're saying that the hours have been curtailed to 6 o'clock. It seemed to me that originally, I know that there were hours on the weekends. A lot of us objected to that, especially being a direct adjoining property. But now I'm hearing that that was curtailed to Monday to Friday until 6 p.m. That's not what I remember seeing from the resolution of the planning board. I think it went till like 8 or 9 p.m. So has that been changed subsequent to that?
I think part of the last discussion
Sir,
was
if you don't mind just going to the mic, because the camera won't pick it up otherwise.
the last discussion with the planning board was to limit our hours of operation. I thought you were there. So I'm looking on this plan, which the hours are stated on there, and it's 8 to 6, Monday through Friday. We never proposed to have any nighttime activities. It's just not part of the operation.
Right, but what I'm saying is the resolution from the planning board had something different. So I'm a little concerned about that ambiguity, and I'd like that to be addressed. I certainly don't want the expanded hours. These would be much more preferable. So if there is an ambiguity, I'd like that to be addressed.
And this is a filed plan, so whatever's on this plan is going to be written into record. So I'll check the record with the minutes with the planning board.
Okay. I'm not so concerned about the minutes, but the resolution. The resolution, as you all know, is a binding document. It's a legal document, so that's why I'm concerned about it. Okay, so we've all heard from the applicant. Those of us who have been at the planning board, we've heard from the applicant a lot. We've heard about what he's proposing. I've been at many of the meetings, and like I said, I've made a lot of comments about it. I think it's important that you hear our side of it. I know that all along the applicant has made mention that he's entitled to the special use permit. He's made several inferences as to why. And I just want to clear up the misconception of that. He's not entitled to this special use permit as of right. If he had it as of right, we wouldn't be here today. So that's number one. What he does have a right to is apply for the special use permit, maybe based on a prior non-conforming use. But that prior non-conforming use does not give it any entitlement to be approved today or by this board at all, just because it was there in the past. So I wanted to be clear on that. There's a couple of other things too that I want to clarify. My concern is that I'm wondering if this town board might be under the impression that they are required to grant this special use permit because the applicant has jumped through certain hoops at the planning board level, or that the planning board has referred it up to the town board. And I want to make it very clear that this board is under no legal obligation and has no legal duty to grant this special permit based on these things, okay? What was done at the planning board level is a different board, okay? And what he had to do there is he had a lot of site plan work to do. He had a lot of boxes to check and some hoops to jump through before his plan could be done there. And then, as a matter of procedure and a matter of course, the planning board, after those things, all those boxes are checked, the planning board has to send it up here. It does not mean that you are obligated to do anything in conformity with that town board. That has no import on this board, what was done prior. In fact, this is here under a plenary review before you as a town board, which means that you're required by law to look at this application with fresh eyes. It's as if it's coming to you for the first time, which it should be, okay? And that's what you're gonna look at, and you're gonna look at the facts and circumstances that are presented. You're gonna look at the specific case here, and you're gonna apply the law that empowers you to decide this. So the statutory authority which governs this process for you at the town board level is set forth in Article 10, Chapter 138 of the Southeast Town Code, which I'll address in pertinent part. But I'd like to first, I've made some copies, and I've also made, I don't know if everybody can see this, but and I don't know if I can put this anywhere, but I'm gonna put it here for now. It's just, yeah, I don't think anybody can see that. But at any rate, it's a copy of the property, his property in relation to our properties.
I think I have a larger plan if you want to look at that.
Does it have all of that?
Sure.
Okay, so at any rate, I have made copies. I have a little map for each of you, so I'm going to pass them out, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to give you all.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jean.
We need a copy for the clerk.
Yeah, I think we're gonna probably use mine. I have to hold it up. Thank you.
Yes, you can have mine afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have one for the clerk?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Didn't mean to skip one.
That's okay.
So what I have there, what I've given to each of you, is the requisite law that governs this process. And I've highlighted certain portions because I know, you're not all attorneys and you're not used to maybe reading statutory law as much as, an attorney is. So I wanted to make it simple and show you the points that are directly applicable here. But at any rate, it's under Chapter 138 of the Town of Southeast Code. And this law provides all of the guidance for this board to make determinations and decisions regarding the application and the guidelines. And it guides you on your procedure. So the provisions in Chapter 138 are what give the board and the board members the authority to act and make decisions as to the application based upon the facts of the case when applying the statute. So I think the statute is pretty straightforward, but I'm going to go over it with you as it pertains to the facts and circumstances here. I'd like to start by addressing, if you give me a moment. I'd like to start by addressing section 138-52, which are the procedures for special permits. And under sub 3, on the first page, if you flip, because the first page deals with the planning board, and it talks to them about what they have to do. But under sub 3, it says town board action, and that's what applies here to this board. So this statute gives the board the authority to make one of 3 determinations after the public hearing. Okay? So the board, according to this statute, it says after the public hearing, the town board may do one of 3 things. It may approve the application. It may approve it subject to modifications. Basically, that gives you the ability to place any restrictions as you deem appropriate.
We know what modifications mean. We know a lot of this.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you do. And you also can deny it. So you have 3 options. You can approve it with modifications, or deny it outright. And I just wanted to be clear about that because I wasn't sure that the board did know that they had that ability. And I don't know if you review the law beforehand or afterwards, and I didn't mean to insult anyone, but it's my job, usually when I'm in a court, to bring this information forward, to talk about the law first and then apply it to the facts. I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of all that. So Chapter 138-53 contains the provisions that set forth the requirements for approving the special permit. And this is your guidance that sets forth the parameters and circumstances in which you may or may not grant the special use permit. So under 138-53A sub 1, essentially, now that is in, that's in the other document that I gave you. Okay, it's general requirements for the special permit approval. And under this, it essentially states that the only way that this board can approve it either outright or with modifications is if this board finds that it will not be a detriment to the site or to the adjacent properties in accordance with the zoning classification of such properties. And that's where I wanted to talk about this here. So this map here, it shows everyone here that I've highlighted the, in orange, this is the subject property that he's requesting the special permit for. And these here are all the properties that are surrounding his property. Every single one of these properties is residentially zoned, including his property. So his property more specifically is zoned RMF, which is residential multifamily. You have 3 single-family properties that are going to probably be the most detrimentally impacted, and they are at the northeastern side of his property. So lots 10, 11, and 12, of which I am one of the owners. I am lot 12. Then over here, on the other side, the southern side of his property, we have Reed Farm. Reed Farm is a condominium / townhouse complex, and this here houses people for residential purposes. They're not businesses there. Over here, we have Holly Stream Condominium, again, a residential property. Every property on here, every property that is contiguous to his property that is not owned by this applicant is residential property. It is residential use. And I wanted to be very clear about that because I know all along at the planning board, at least, what he's proposing is a tree farm. He's calling it a tree farm, okay? And it doesn't matter what he calls it. Along in the application that's on file with the planning board, the application summary sheet states that it's for a commercial purpose. So again, there's ambiguity. There's a lot of ambiguities that are still unresolved. So all along, he's been stating, although the documents state that it's a commercial property, that it's a commercial use he's seeking, he's always clarified that it's not, that it's a tree farm. I want to bring to your attention, although it's called a tree farm, irrespective of whatever it's cloaked in, it still has an underlying purpose of one thing. It is a business operation. He is proposing a business operation right here, smack dab in the middle of all residential properties. He's proposing to put a business operation in there, whether he calls it commercial, whether he calls it a tree farm, he could call it a unicorn farm, it doesn't matter. What's important is the use that he's looking to put there. He claims that it's a tree farm, like I said, but he's using it as a stock growing field for use in his landscaping business, okay? And he's deriving a profit from that, not directly from retail use, not at this point, but what he's asking for is a special permit to use this as a growing field to derive a profit in his landscaping business. He's going to sell these to his customers. So this is in fact a business operation unequivocally. There is no mistake about that. Many times, like I said, he stated that it was just going to be a tree farm. But, you know, if he were planting trees to leave there and just keep growing trees, I'd have no objection. And I'm sure none of my neighbors would have any objections. I'll tell you what, if that's all he was doing and he was planting trees to leave there forever, I'd grab a shovel, I'd put on my boots, and I'd go out there and I'd dig with him and I'd plant. But he's not proposing that. What he's proposing is to plant. And there's also another change that I heard that he just stated. He just recently here stated that the trees are gonna have an 8-year growing time. At the town board, at the planning board level, he was saying it was gonna be a couple of years and then he was gonna start harvesting. And I assume once it gets going, it's going to be more frequent. But what he's actually proposing, or what he proposed in earlier times before the planning board, was that he was going to plant and harvest the trees for use in his operation. And again, it's not just trees, folks. We're not objecting to trees. I have no objection to trees. What I'm objecting to is a business operation right next to my property, which I bought fully aware that this was a residential parcel next to me. I had no idea, and I would have never contemplated in a million years, just like I'm sure none of my other fellow homeowners would have ever contemplated, that a residential property right here in the middle of all residential properties on either side of it would ever be able to be used as a business purpose. And why would we contemplate that? Every other parcel around it is residential. So that's the objection. It's the objection to the business use. Again, it is not just trees. I can't stress that enough. What we're objecting to is the business operation. He's going to operate a business here. He is going to have equipment and machinery. I don't know that it's going to take 8 years. He's changed it so many times, I can't be sure of that. At the planning board level, it was a couple of years. Now I'm hearing 8. I don't know why that changed. I don't know about growing, but I can tell you this, I don't want to roll the dice with that, because what's going to happen is he's going to be harvesting. And again, maybe it's going to take a few years to get up and running, but once it is, he's going to be planting and harvesting and replanting and reharvesting and replanting, and you see the cycle. And all to the detriment of the homeowners surrounding this property. We're going to be subjected to noise. We're going to be subjected to hearing machinery run. We're going to be subjected to dust that it emanates from the property, from digging. And I'm sure, he said he doesn't have a lot of digging, but you know what? Once this gets up and running again, you have to dig these properties out. I know he's not going to cut them down with a chainsaw, but he's going to be planting, replanting, planting again, replanting and reharvesting. It's going to be a perpetual business. It's going to be a perpetual operation, and it's going to be to our detriment. We have a right as residential homeowners to quiet use and enjoyment of our property. That is a covenant in every single residential deed. That is a right that we have. And if we are hearing this noise and we're seeing this business operation, and I know there's going to be people in that field working, that's a business, okay? I know we're going to see that. I know we're going to hear this. That is going to be detrimental to us because it's going to impinge upon our rights. It is going to basically abrogate our right, or basically abrogate our quiet use and enjoyment of the property. What he also didn't mention here, but he did mention, and I want to bring this up to the attention of this board, is that at, I believe it was the January 8th meeting, someone in the audience, and I don't remember who, I think it might have been,
Can you please get near the mic?
sorry, I moved around. I believe it was this gentleman here. Somebody brought up the fact of an ag use. And the applicant did state that he intended to apply for an ag use. Now, I don't know how familiar you all are with that. I certainly had to research it myself. An agricultural use would give him, if he qualified, would give him a tax exemption for his property. And he can't get it now. He has to have the plants in the ground. He has to have this operation up and running. So he would apply for it once he did. The important part of an ag use is not only is he going to get a tax abatement if he qualifies, which we all around him will still be paying our fair share of the taxes and maybe an increased amount because it's all part of the same pie if he gets a decrease. But in addition to that, what's really important about an ag use is in order to qualify for an agricultural exemption, he would have to generate $50,000 in sales revenue in order to qualify for this ag exemption. Do you know how much impact that has on the property? Do you know the amount of use that property will have to get in order to qualify, in order to generate $50,000 a year in sales? That's a lot of money, folks. $50,000 a year, and it's not retail. He'd have to generate this $50,000 a year in revenue for his use in his own landscaping company. That's what he's proposing. That's a lot more use than is being presented. And that's a lot of use, it's a lot of noise, it's a lot of, again, infringement on our rights as surrounding property owners. I want to let you hear something. So right now, when I sit in my backyard, it's pretty quiet. When I sit in my backyard, this is what I hear. Can you all hear that? No. Can you all hear that?
Oh, I
No?
get this.
Exactly. That's what I hear in my backyard. Absolutely nothing. It's absolutely quiet. It's peaceful. I get to enjoy the quiet, peaceful use of my property as the covenant in my deed requires, as I'm entitled to as a residential owner. You know what I'm going to hear if you approve this special use permit? That's what we're going to hear. We're going to hear this. Can everybody hear that? A little bit different than what we hear in my yard now. A little bit different than what my neighbors hear. That's what the objection is about. I have no objection to trees.
Please address the board.
Sorry. I love trees. I'm sorry to see some of the giant trees on his property line go. He told me that those, I don't know how tall they are, I think they're like 60, maybe 100 feet tall. He said he's going to have to cut those down. He's going to have to cut them all down in order to get, I think the word he used was light into the understudy. Not sure what that means, but I assume it needs to get sunlight onto the property. I'm sad to see those go, and I remember talking to him about this a bunch of times when we were at the property, and it was very, very saddened to see this, to hear that those trees will have to come down in order for him to plant his nursery. But at any rate, going back to the statute, I want to bring your attention to the portion of the statute that talks about what I was mentioning before. The special use permit approval. The general conditions and standard for conditional use and special permit approval are as follows. The proposed use shall not be detrimental to the site or adjacent properties in accordance with the zoning classifications of such properties. Everything that I've presented to you today, the abrogation of our quiet use and enjoyment, it's going to deter us from sitting on the deck after a hard day and winding down and hearing the peacefulness of our backyard, sitting out there and quietly reading a book, or having a cocktail, or even entertaining. Who's going to want to entertain with a business operation right next to their home? And I know I'm not singled out here. All of my fellow property owners would like to be able to continue to do that, as we were guaranteed by our deeds, by the residentially zoned area in which we're currently in. We'd all like to continue enjoying that. And this will not be permitted if this board grants this special use permit. And that would be a travesty for us, and it would be out of context and out of conformity with what the statute requires. Because the statute says, in order to grant this, you must find, the word is shall. When the word shall is used in a legal document or in a legal statute, it means that it's binding authority, as opposed to the word may. If it said may, you would have some deference that you could enforce it or you might not have to. But the word shall means that you must find that it's not a detrimental use or not a detriment to the adjacent properties in accordance with the zoning classification of these properties. And again, I can't emphasize enough that this is all residential property, and what he's proposing to do is to put a business operation in there. So, on another note, if for some reason the board decides to find in derogation of the statute that is binding, if the board somehow finds that this does not violate this statute and that they can issue this special permit to the applicant, the article also provides that it empowers you as a board, that you are able to add restrictions that are appropriate under the circumstances. And this authority is found under section 138-53 sub B. It states that in addition to the general standards for conditional uses and special permits, as a condition of approval of any such use, establish any other additional standards, conditions, and requirements. So what that basically means is that you can make the issuance of this permit contingent upon certain restrictions being added and put in place.
Ms.
You-
Frey, we're very familiar with the special permits, and, there may be other people that would like to speak,
Sure,
so.
I will certainly wrap up.
Thank you.
So with that said, I am simply coming here and asking that this board act in accordance with the statute and deny this special use permit based on what I've mentioned. And if for some reason you do decide to grant it, I'm going to ask that the board add some particular conditions, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through each condition, but I'm going to hand the board the conditions that I've written out that we are requesting, and I'm going to hand them to each of the board members so that you have them. And the last one is about the hours. I wasn't aware that the hours were reduced, and I'm still not convinced about that because in the resolution I see, it has different hours, so I'm requesting these hours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming.
I'm sorry? Oh, sure.
Jamie, could you email the town board too?
I'm sorry?
Could you just email this to the town board as well?
Absolutely. Be happy to. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mrs. Frey has brought up a lot of good information, a lot of good points. And I'll first start off by saying, if I had misspoke in the past to the planning board or to the town board about an entitlement of my visit to you or the planning board, I apologize. I never claimed to have an entitlement to my proposed use here. If I did, if you really feel like I had that entitlement, I wouldn't have gone through the whole process and the expense of anything else. I would have just done it if I thought I was entitled. So I apologize if I misspoke. I'm not sure if I did. But the code also, as Mrs. Frey had gone through, yes, the board has an obligation, but also as a property owner myself, I've gone through all these hoops and hurdles. I'm trying to show a project which will not be detrimental to the property, to the neighboring properties, to the neighborhood. And I think there's still a misconception on what's going on with the proposed tree farm. The sounds that she has recorded and displayed, what she didn't also record and display was just an average day in suburbia. There's 2 multifamily complexes on both sides of our property, some residential property on the north and east side of the property. There's an apple orchard farm that sells for profit down the road. So a proposed tree farm would be, in my opinion, would be in keeping with what is already in the existing area. On an average day, if I were to sit on that property, which the recording doesn't really show, there's lawns being mowed, there's leaf blowers going, there's cars going by on 22. Those recordings did not reflect an average sound effect for an average day. So I don't think it's a fair assessment to say that a tree farm will have a noise detriment to the area. There will be noise when the project is started because they take it from the current state, which is basically, it's an overrun, dilapidated parcel of land that is filled with vines, invasives, dead trees, dangerous trees, and I'm going to bring it up to a state where it's going to be a farm, where there's high grass, there's trees growing in the field. That, in my opinion, would be a better use of that property than the current state of the property now. There is no way that I'll be able to pull a tree out of that ground. With this proposed tree farm, there's 3 or 4 other farms in Brewster that are much larger, they have much more established base. My niche and my competitive advantage would be leaving trees in the ground and growing them up to a respectable size where I'm not competing with a wholesale nursery that's cranking trees out. It's just not possible. Mrs. Frey has brought up a couple times where the time frame has changed, and it's a fact of nature. If we're having a wet season like we've had a couple of years, yeah, I'll get 12 inches of growth off a tree. But you go back 3 years ago, we didn't get a spit of rain for 6, 7 months. The tree's not growing; it's barely staying alive. So it's very hard to pinpoint when the activity is going to start and end on the tree farm. But I can tell you right now, it's going to be years before we're able to pull something out of there. So there's going to be basic maintenance activities, less than what's happening on the surrounding properties. So depending on which way you want to look at it, I can sit here and I can raise my hand and complain about the lawn mowing happening next door and the tree chipping over there and trucks backing up. I can complain about the same thing. What we're proposing won't add to that detriment of the property. So.
Excuse me, I just have a question. Is the threshold for an ag permit 50,000?
I'm not sure, and that's a great point. Again, I don't ever recall saying that, and I'm going to question her on that.
The reason I ask is my neighbor had applied, and I thought it was 10, but just something for us to.
I'm not sure about the criteria, but also one important part to bring up. The property's 9.87 acres. If we ever did go for an ag exemption, it'd only be on a portion of the property that's being used for ag activities. It wouldn't be the entire property. I have not thought that far down the road. I don't know if it's a possibility. I'm not really sure, but it's not on the table at this point.
Does anybody else from the public want to come up and share?
Hi, I'm speaking also on the behalf of the residents.
Your name?
I'm Marianne Fave, 55 Guinea Road. Residency, looking at this map, 11. I do kind of want to comment on the sound. I recall you mentioning earlier how you weren't sure how frequently you would be digging up the trees because you haven't spent much time on the property. The noise you're explaining is the noise that you would expect from 22, but being in the back end of the property on the residential side, I can absolutely second Ms. Fay's remarks that it is silent. We don't hear 22. The most we hear is the waterfall when we have a large rain, and that's due to more tree clearing, which has been a larger detriment that will probably continue given the current plans that we are hearing from from Arborscape. But aside from that, my largest concern with my residency is the easement that is in between properties 10 and 11, and the detriment that I believe that that would cause to our house and our neighbors. I moved into that house when I was 6 months old. I'm 28, turning 29 now. So in the last 30 years, we have not seen any vehicles operate that land. It is kind of unprecedented. We have heard, I understand you haven't claimed that you have a right to the easement. I've heard some back and forth that there is some kind of right in terms of emergency vehicles, which I aligned and completely understand. But to Ms. Fay's point, we're looking mostly for restrictions in the use of the easement, because I believe that the current plan now allows for emergency and for convenience. And that is a term that I find far too vague to properly define. We've asked in the planning boards if they could define it, and nobody can. Google will come up as for cause, but for cause essentially means anything. So we are desperately hoping to restrict the use of that easement as well as construction. You mentioned that is that the same road that the Holly Stream individuals are concerned with attaching? Can you show me where the road that they're referring to that you said might be important but is something you might be willing to forego is located?
Prior to tonight, I've met with your mom and the other neighbors in the area. This is all taken off the table. So from your house here, to the first initial part of our activity is roughly about 300 feet. All that's been taken off the table. At this point in time, I am not proposing to do anything in this back portion of the property. I'm not proposing to do anything on that easement. However, I do have a legal right to use that easement. It's a deeded right.
I understand that.
It's all on the Putnam County record.
So what is the extent of that legal right? Like, what is the definition of your use case that you are defined to? Because in like emergency scenarios, again, we're aligned with that. That makes sense. But for convenience is far too vague. We've asked you, why do you want the access to the easement in the future? I understand it's not on the table now. However, we all know it's much easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. So our concern is that once this is up and running, his hands will be tied, your hands will be tied. We don't want to come into that. So we're asking for restrictions ahead of time to try to prevent a case in the future, because there's clearly some kind of intended hope for the future that they're just not able to reach now because we've come together so frequently to voice our concern. And I really, I plead that you guys consider strengthening the restrictions on this easement and this property. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if the use of the easement, that was a deeded right of the property, it goes back to the early 1900s or whatever, and I sent it to Mr. Stevens, so he probably remembers it better than I do. But I don't think this is the town board's purview. I think it's a civil matter. If you want to sue or something for restriction access to that deeded right, I'm sure you can, but I don't think this is part of the town board's review process right now. At this point in time, I'm not improving anything on that back portion of the property or that easement, but I'm not going to give up future rights because it transfers with the property. That's how I bought the property.
Good evening, sorry to be late. I'm going to talk about the
Miriam,
water.
give us your name and where you live.
Oh, my name is Miriam Ikutiel. I'm from Panorama Drive. I'm going to talk about the water. This area that they propose to have a nursery is mostly wetland. It's the water that concerns all of us. Now, for the last 45 years, I'm in the trade of the landscaping, water conservation. So you cannot tell me stories how much it takes, how long
Miriam,
it takes
just
to grow evergreen.
just come closer to the mic.
How it takes evergreen. Okay, a good nurseryman who have an evergreen nursery, he wants a year between 2.5, 3 years the most. He wants to change the trees. Otherwise, it's not profitable. So don't tell me 5 years. Talk-
size trees are you starting with?
Most depend where we start and what size. It's true.
And what's your market when you sell a tree?
Depend which way you're gonna sell. I know that recently I spoke to some other business around here. Amongst them, I think he's a town engineer, water engineer too, Joe. They all start doing nurseries for Christmas trees because it's very profitable. So I don't know if that's your intention. It's 3 years at the most. Otherwise, it's not profitable, and it's a lot of work. Now, I'm a collector of miniature evergreen. I lost 3 specimens in the last 2 years because of disease that I could not control. And I don't want to use pesticide or insecticide or anything else. It's a heavy use of chemical into the evergreen trees. That's given. You have no choice. You have to spray to prevent, you have to spray to control and everything else. And we are talking about wetland. We are talking about water that eventually comes to our faucet. I buy water. We have our own private well, the whole neighborhood. I still buy water to drink because the water here is contaminated so badly because of the homeowner use or nursery use. I'm not blaming anybody. I just buy my water.
So,
And I concerned about the water. I'm concerned about my children and the grandchildren.
Ms.
And the
Pep-
nursery that you propose in the wetland area is a hazard. I'm not going to homeowner, it's not my concern. My concern is the water.
So if,
I've been dealing with water for the last 45 years. And I'm in the industry.
Miriam,
And I know the owner of your company. They know me, they should know me by now too, for all those years being in the business. So that's my concern. If you want to have a nursery, here my suggestion. Less traffic, less pesticide, start a farm of native perennials.
okay.
There's
so
a market for it, go
yeah,
for it.
This is a public hearing, we should be addressing the board and not his,
I know, but
business
I'm
model.
just saying, I'm talking to the board, I want you to consider the fact of the water, the use of chemicals and the use of heavy machinery, and it's something that we're gonna cry for generation. You can't get rid of chemical overnight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bring up a lot of good points. I'm not planning on just doing evergreens. I guess that was a misconception there. We're going to do a variety of different deciduous and evergreen plants, plants I use in my projects, plants that I like, plants with unique features to them that we're able to grow up. I disagree with you saying that there has to be a heavy pesticide use in any nursery. Different plants will have different pests, different weather conditions will promote different pests and disease, but it's not a guarantee that pesticides will be used on this property to maintain a nursery stock. And then in regards to the wetlands, we are roughly about 135 feet away from the New York State wetlands on the west side of the property. On the interior of the property, there's 2 locally regulated wetlands, and you have to understand the wetlands. Not all wetlands are created equal. There's a quality scale that's defined by a wetland. The 2 interior wetlands are basically fed by drainage that was errantly put where it was. It's coming off a roadside, a culvert got clogged, and all of a sudden it found a home onto the property over the course of umpteen years. And if you look at the species of plants that are in that wetlands, it's inundated with Phragmites, Russian olive, mugwort. There's very few quality plants in those 2 wetlands.
You know why? Because they purify the water.
Well, listen, we're not, Miriam, we're not here to argue with each other. It's a public hearing. If you need to respond, come to the mic and talk.
Okay, in the last 10 years, I was part of the reclamation of water in Putnam County. All the big projects on Marvin Avenue and Railroad Street and in Carmel, those are my projects. So I know what Phragmites does. It purifies the water. And that's what it's there, exactly. That's what we wanted to be there, to purify the water. So your children don't get sick, neither mine.
Miriam, we understand the water is
Okay.
definitely an issue, and we'll look into that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dolores Gallo, 69 Guinea Road. I'm directly behind the property. My concern is the easement is on my property, but what I'm very confused about is that the wetlands is right here behind my property, and there's supposed to be a 100-foot buffer around the wetlands, which would definitely be on my property and also go off onto Jeannie's property as well. And which also would lead right from the easement all the way into the wetlands. So I'm not understanding why the easement would ever be allowed to be used. I know that it has not been used in 45 years. The previous owner told me that. He bought the house in 1979. Unfortunately, he died in 2019, but he had said that we don't have to worry about anything. The easement has never been used. It won't be used. The wetland is back there. And that's one of the reasons why we bought the house, to retire in comfort. Originally, the plan, he was going to knock down the whole wetlands, which would basically, I'm much higher up, would expose me to 22 Reed Farm and Holly Stream. So my buffer of quietness would totally disappear, and I would be exposed to all of that. And even now, you know, with all of that there, you can hear the train, you can hear the stream, and you can hear people hot wheeling on 22 for some reason. I don't know why this happens, but people do that on 22. And I do not want commercial traffic ever coming through my property, ever. There's not even enough turn or anything for a big truck to even do that. And if that does go on my property, basically it is in the yard of my other two neighbors where they barbecue and sit, once it gets warm. As a matter of fact, one was barbecuing 2 weeks ago. It was beautiful out, So I just don't understand why that should ever be used, why it should be allowed to be used, considering that is wetlands. And if it becomes commercial, then, either way, it's just going to be out of our hands sooner or later. So I just don't want it ever to be commercial either as well. Thank you.
Thank you. You could come on up.
Oh, he's,
I just want to address the wetland concern. We are proposing all our activity to be out of the wetlands. We're proposing our activity to be on the west end of a locally regulated wetland. And again, wetlands are qualified about what's in there and what they do, what their function is. The neighboring properties, whether it's Mrs. Gallo's, Mrs. Frey's, Favors, Holly Stream, Reed Farm, all have current uses in the wetland buffer. There's hot tubs in the buffer, there's a septic system, there's a pool, there's parking lots. There's multiple uses in the existing buffer. What we're proposing will be a much more benign use of the wetlands after it's cleaned up and the invasives are removed from the area.
Good evening. My name is Michael Pappas. I live at 705 Seven Fields Lane, Reed Farm. I found out something tonight that I didn't know. I thought this was commercial property, but obviously it's not. And it would beg the question, why would the town allow residential property to become commercial in the midst of two condominium complexes and private homes? It doesn't make any sense. But I got what I think is a foil from here last Friday, and I'm looking at the sale of this property. It looks like, let's see, let me read it. It appears that Wellington Brook Estates, who sold the property to Patrick J. Alanga in May of 2021 for $1, bought it back under the name of Wellington 2 Development LLC in April of 2023. What was that all about, and why the name change? Anybody know?
I can't answer to that. I would refer to Will if there is an answer.
I wouldn't know the answer.
Yeah, that's.
Nor do
Okay.
I think it's relevant.
Yeah.
The last sale that I see here on this foil was at Wellington 2 Development. Let me see. No, Patrick J. Alonga sold it to Wellington 2 Development for $1,850,000 on 4/11/2023. It does not show a sale to this gentleman unless he is Wellington 2 Development. No? So why isn't this sale shown here? That was last year. I didn't get full information.
I can't answer that. I'll have to
Okay.
look to find out, but that's an answer I just don't have.
I don't know if it would fall under a special permit anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of not what we're talking about right now, too, though.
Now it was Wellington Brook Estates that was doing nursery work on that property 6 to 10 years ago. And they were very disruptive with their operation, with trucks backing up from early morning to late afternoon, making noise with beeping, while beeping, backing up, forcing my wife and I to keep our windows closed all day. I think I mentioned that at the last meeting. I'm a retired person. I spend a lot of time at home, and my wife does. I don't think this gentleman should come in here, because he's going to be disruptive, just like that nursery was. And that's my biggest complaint. And when I asked him what he could do about the noise, what was it? OSHA requirements wouldn't allow you to do anything about it? You couldn't stop the noise backing up?
Certain vehicles, certain tractors, certain machinery.
Sir, can you, sorry, can you go to the mic? I'm sorry.
Per OSHA requirements, any, I'm not sure the exact criteria, but a tractor, a certain truck will need an audible backup alarm. So that's something and again, I own a landscape company and all our trucks have those alarms. If I were to disconnect those alarms, I'd be out of compliance. That's the government. I can't change that.
All the more reason for not putting your business on that property and affecting condominium complexes. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of discussion about the commercial activity. I understand, and Mrs. Frey did point this out a couple months ago. I think commercial businesses, it has to be interpreted per the individual use. We're not doing heavy manufacturing. We're not doing certain activities that would be a constant source of noise. And I guess that's where the board has to rely on the information at hand to say, okay, there's different, not all commercial activities are treated equal. A lawyer could be a commercial activity and so on and so forth. The retail will be different than a home business. So I think the board has to really look at what we're proposing here. And to Mr. Paps's question, I mean, I hear every day every couple days when the garbage truck comes to Reed Farms or Holly Stream or even backs down that common driveway down there, they have a beeper. You can't control it. It's unfortunately part of our activity. What I will tell you is that we'll probably have less activity on our property after the initial development of it than the neighboring properties. It's just not the nature of the tree farm.
You mentioned the sanitation people. They're there for 15 minutes. We're talking about an all-day project. Let's stop comparing apples and oranges, please.
be there all day.
Initially, you will be. Just like that guy that was there
guys.
from.
Hey, guys,
that I said 6 to 10 minutes.
we're just talking about the permit. We don't
Yeah.
need to go back and forth. You don't need to defend yourself each time someone asks a question. Just ask your question
All right.
and we'll move on.
My point was, he was talking about noise from garbage trucks. They're there 15 minutes, and
Yep.
twice a week,
We understand.
we can tolerate that.
Having fun? I'm Nicholas Trishida, 51 Guinea Road, with Jeannie Frey. I have a question. So you changed I'm sorry, let's start from the back time. You said last time, if I remember correctly, that you're going to leave the 66,000, I gotta get the microphone.
Correct.
66,000 feet left alone, correct? Right here?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. My question is, you also mentioned last time that there's going to be a whole deer fence going around the property. Is that still?
Correct.
Okay. So you're leaving this 66,000 square feet alone. My house right abuts it right up against that property line. How wide are you going to be clear cutting all the way up our property line here?
Probably about 3 feet for the initial installation. and then after that, we're gonna let it grow in.
So you're gonna have, but how are you gonna clear cut it? You're gonna do that, you gotta bring trucks and, not trucks, I mean, you're not cutters, but actually you do, because you're gonna you have some 40-foot trees there. Actually, that's the board. How are the trees gonna be cut? Going up along our property, installing the deer fence?
We're gonna work around the trees, unless it's dead or dangerous. I've kind of mentioned this in the past. I have no motivation to do additional work. I'm a little bit concerned, and we'll probably end up talking to the neighbors. If there's anything dead or dying hanging over your property, I'll probably ask you to sign a waiver. Heaven forbid something falls down. I don't want to get sued that I caused damage or injury. But the nature of the deer fence, it's a wire fence set on 6-inch wood posts. It can weave around the trees. I have no objection to leaving that stuff along the border.
Okay. So, yeah,
Because as much as I don't want to see you, you don't want to see me, everybody doesn't want to see each other.
that's
so.
right. Okay, we're in agreement in something. So yeah, I mean, you're saying you're gonna, but there's nothing done, you're saying this, you're not gonna touch this at this time. So are you agreeing now that you are not gonna clear cut and put a deer fence up along our property line and the other?
Correct. I'll cut 3 feet so I can get in there and work. I mean, there's
Along
rolls
the
of fences
property.
along the property lines for the first installation, and then after that, I don't care if it grows wild.
Then how long is it gonna take you to clear cut all the way around, whether it's 3 feet? I'm thinking it's gonna be a little wider, because you have to bring backhoes in there.
No,
Well, whatever, 3 feet, 8 feet, whatever. How long is that gonna take to clear cut all the way around and grade it, because you can't put a fence in on uneven property, so you got rocks, you have the board. How do you're gonna have to grade along that whole 3 feet all the way around the property, is that correct?
the nature of this fence, it's really pliable. It can go up and down. It doesn't have to be flat, it doesn't have to be level. It's not a wood fence that you gotta rack each time you go up a grade change. It's basically a wire metal fence. The grade and discrepancies, that has no bearing on us. And honestly, I'm not looking to do more work, so we're gonna keep the deer out, and that's the only thing I care about.
Well, that's a good point. You're bringing up keeping the deer out. Has there been a wildlife impact study on this?
We've done everything that has been required by us from the initial submission to the planning board.
Does that include a wildlife impact study?
There's different stages on what you have to do, and we met the criteria, and we hit that, the wildlife study that we had to meet.
So the wildlife
I don't,
impact study's been
stage one,
complete?
stage A, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but we did what we had to do. And that's all on file with the town.
Okay. And an environmental impact study has been done?
We did all that.
Correct, okay. Last thing here is you bring up that you're gonna move this, you move the easement up to the middle of the property, correct?
No, the easement's the only part that,
I'm sorry, you're gonna cut it out up to the middle of the property. Right here, instead of going along here along the edge, you're going into the middle to the piece that.
correct. Originally, we were gonna go this way.
Yes.
But, you know, talking to Michael and Holly Stream, I really had no logic about keeping it on the north property line. It was just where it ended up when I did the drawing, and I have no objection moving it to the middle of the property.
Okay. So now my question comes from one of the neighbors that, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, but you have a easement going along those two properties. You said in the last meeting, and you said at the beginning of this meeting, you're not gonna touch the 66,000 square feet at this time. So what that's gonna do, that's gonna impact us, because you're gonna run that, whoever I'm talking to, is gonna run the easement along these two properties here. So really that's gonna end up happening, if you're gonna have access here, you're still gonna have to come across towards my property along the fence line going up. So is that gonna be the plan going forward?
I'm gonna do what I do now. I can walk up and down that easement, and nothing's gonna change with that easement. We're not gonna improve it. I'm gonna walk up and down it as I do now.
Okay. So you're going back to the deer fence, I just wanna be clear, you're not gonna do any leveling on the property, it's gonna be cutting down trees, that's it, no leveling off?
Correct.
Okay, but we're not gonna have any screening?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, is somebody playing a video or something? Could you please not? Thank you.
What was I talking
Screen.
about? So you're gonna do all the clear cutting, thank you. You're gonna do the clear cutting over here, the 3 feet, but we're not gonna have any screening from the work that's gonna go on until it gets completed, correct?
Well, part of our initial discussions, when we were going back and forth trying to find a resolution between the neighbors, I told you I was gonna plant some large evergreens on that back corner of yours and mine's property and Holly Stream property, because you're probably in direct line of activity because you're lower in grade and they're down to the north of us. So we agreed to plant 3 large evergreens. I said spruce, you said arborvitae's. I'll give you whatever you want, doesn't matter.
No, what I'm saying is the screening is along the fence line that you're gonna put in. You're gonna be cutting, we're not gonna have, Reed Farm and also Holly Stream, the work you're gonna do, there's a buffer there. The work you're gonna do along putting this in, this deer fence in here is going right up against my property line. That's my concern.
You have big spruces here, there's all stuff, there's material against on your property line.
I got one tree.
No, there's more than that. With the compost pile and stuff, you have little
Well,
bushes.
that's all the way down here. That's where the property is, my house is up here. This is where my deck is right here. This is where you're gonna be putting
Deck is up here.
Well, either way, you're gonna be putting in the fence right here.
Right, and then
But
right
right
where your
against-
deck is, there's 2 or 3 spruce, and there's a whole collection of different indigenous materials that
Okay.
wasn't planted, so.
So we're disagreement, what's on my
That's gonna stay
property.
there. That's not
Okay.
coming out.
But there's, again, we're gonna, you're not gonna do any additional screening when you put the deer fence in.
No, part of the problem with doing additional screening along that north property line and the east property line is, I mentioned this a couple times, in order for the trees, screening trees to survive, they need sunlight. So because the southern exposure is blocked by the stuff that's remaining, I can't plant anything there, even if I wanted to. I planted, it's just gonna die within the season's time. One of our initial applications, when we first started, way back when, I wanted to clear this and screen this, but the consensus of the group was that they'd rather leave it the way it is and not do anything. And
Okay.
I said, okay, fine. So I just did the screening by your property there. I wish I could do more, it's just the site won't allow it because of the conditions.
And then actually, just a quick question, because I remember she brought it up, that you have 100-foot trees along Reed Farm. Are those gonna be?
Holly Stream.
Reed Farm. You got huge trees on Reed Farm. You said you were gonna clear cut that, you were gonna take them all down.
That all stays, because this is wetlands here.
So you're not gonna touch any of these trees that are coming all the way down here?
Correct.
Especially the 100-foot trees that are
Correct.
well. Okay.
The only stuff that happens here in the body of the nursery, but also we're not clearing everything. If there's anything that can stay, there's a couple oaks back there, a couple red maples, we have to limb them up so the sun can come in underneath the understory,
Okay.
and they're gonna remain. I'm concerned about the evergreens that are back here because they're compromised, there's a lot of decay, there's a lot of broken. If you walk back there now, you'll see what I'm talking about. Holly Stream has a row of evergreens, those are gonna remain as well, we're gonna prune those. Again, it's mutually beneficial where the pruning is gonna help keep them up so they're not falling over on their property or our property.
Okay. Question for the board, by a show of hands, how many of you have actually walked the property?
I've walked the property.
You walked on his property?
Yep.
Have you walked the neighbor's properties?
I know the neighbor's property. I've been living here for a long time.
Can I ask you to come and walk the property before you decide? Our property, so you could see it from our perspective.
Yeah, I can do
Good.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Phil Gallo, and I own the property just east of there, and I wanted to ask you a question. The property line wall, the wall that's there, how far is the wetlands from that wall? You tell me.
Oh, I would say it's about 20 feet off your wall.
Okay, so you know where my well is? 35 feet from the wall.
From the wall.
From the wall, 35 feet. Now, I know that's going to affect my drinking water. I think it will affect my drinking water if he does anything there. And that's what I'm concerned about. We have wells, he has a well there too. And I don't know what he's putting in the ground. So we have to worry about that also. And not only that, if he cuts stuff down, there goes everything of my view. I have a 3-tier. So if I'm up on top and look down now, I'm just gonna see nothing but the trees. And that's it. We don't have any more animals coming in the yard. And it's like, you know, I don't know what's happened since then. We used to have a lot of deer and stuff come in, nothing now. So I don't know what's going on with that. And I just want to tell you about the the well stuff. And just to look into that, please. Thank you.
We're actually downgrading of your well, and basically, we're not proposing to do heavy pesticide use, and we're not planning on putting anything in the soil. There's roughly about 300 feet horizontal distance between our activity and your well. That's actually more, it's probably 350, 335, right? So your well's in the wetlands there. We're not gonna do any activity close to that. There's that buffer area
And
there,
where are you going up to with your cutting down, clearing?
right about here. So it's roughly about 300 feet from that stone wall that separates the properties. And just west of there.
So now I have this easement also problem, that now he's saying I could just walk on my property. Just anyway, I don't know if it's him, what if somebody else walks on there that works for him that I don't know? I mean, what do we do in this case? You know, it's an easement. Not only that, Guinea Road is like 20 feet wide. And if you go up there, you have to be careful. There's, you know, trees and stuff you can't see coming by. You gotta be careful by that easement. It's very dangerous. So that's another issue, is the easement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just like to add one more anecdote in terms of the easement. I understand you're not clearing or planning on clearing anytime soon. The area over here, close to the wetlands. You made a comment that you planned on, in terms of recent reuse of the easement, would just be walking down it like you currently do. I look forward to having any members of the board come over to walk the easement, and what you will see is 30 to 45 years of bramble and decay of trees, and just the concept that casual passage has been ongoing currently, and you're just going to continue to do it without clearing anything out, and it will be beneficial to you, is crazy to me, because you can't walk through that right now. No one has used it. The nature has taken it over. So unless you intend on clearing it, which you have said that you do not intend on clearing it, it essentially serves no purpose. So it just seems a little contradictory, and I would just like to call that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
We were out there a couple months ago, Nicholas and Tom LaPerche and Jeannie, I think you were there, Mrs. Gallo, we were all there. We did walk up and down that easement. We did go back because I was waving a flag showing where the nursery was going to start. So we've been back there in recent, is probably, I don't know, December, something like that. We were back there, so.
But you couldn't cross over. You had to.
Absolutely, we crossed over. Absolutely.
Oh, that sounds pretty detrimental. I would.
Okay.
I'd like to just touch on a few things that were stated here, and I'd like to readdress them. He just stated before that with regard to pesticides, that there's no guarantee that he will use pesticides. But before at the planning board, he swore up and down he absolutely would not use pesticides, that he wouldn't use irrigation.
Okay, here's the thing, Jeannie, we're not at the planning board meeting.
I understand that.
We don't know what was said and what was recorded.
Yep.
If it was, we can go back and try to find it, but it's probably not gonna make a difference at this point. So just keep going.
Okay, the reason I'm telling you is because I know you weren't at the planning board meetings, and I wanted you to be aware of the variations in what he's presenting.
I actually was. I was on the planning board, so.
Oh, that's right. You were.
Yep,
Thank you,
I
Wendy.
was. So I
Thank-
was. Yep. I was at
So you-
most of the meetings prior
Okay,
to
you were.
January 1st.
But
Yep.
it's all in the minutes.
It
I
is.
mean, many of us have sat and actually listened to the minutes, and that's where I'm getting the information from too, as well as recalling it from memory. But there's always variations, there's always things changing, and that's what I think causes a lot of distrust for the rest of us homeowners. We're very concerned about one thing being said and another thing being done, and then it changing, and there's a lot of inconsistencies. And I wrote a very lengthy letter to the planning board about the inconsistencies. I am not sure if you had access to that, but what I want to point out is that I know there's also been a lot of concern about him using commercial vehicles or equipment and trucks going up and down that easement that traverses and encumbers Lot 10. Lot 10 is Gallo's property, and that easement is going over that property. And it's for him to have the ability, if he chooses in the future, to use that for trucks or commercial equipment or whatever he has to come down and access his property, I'm going to ask the board that if you do somehow grant this special permit, that you make the granting of the permit conditioned upon him not using that for ingress and egress for his business. And you have every absolute right to make that condition. There's no limit to what conditions you can place on granting a special use permit. So I'm going to ask you in fairness to all the residential property owners to consider us. And another thing, as homeowners in this, and as a resident of the town of Southeast, which I know the applicant is not, he's not even a resident of the state. He's a resident of Ridgefield, Connecticut. So he goes home to his quiet and peace. But as a homeowner and as a resident and as a voting member of this community, we elect officials with the hopes that they're going to take into account our needs as homeowners, as tax-paying citizens of this county and of this town, that you will consider our needs and not disregard our rights that we have to quiet use and enjoyment, our rights as homeowners. We expect our elected officials to consider us. That's why we vote for people that take into account our needs, not trample our rights in favor of a non-resident. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to come up? Any comments from the board?
No.
No comments.
You know, I would like to walk that property if you have time. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. I'll contact you if you don't mind.
Yeah, weekends are fine. I'm actually away next week, so Saturday, Sunday, I'll make myself available, so.
Okay, I'll contact you. Just one last look, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, thank you, Stefan, for presenting your case. I make a motion to close the public hearing for Arbor Creek.
Second.
Leaving,
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Keeping comment period open for 5 days.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, so we could go right into our work session. Our first work session discussion is changes to Chapter 83 Historic Sites Application, preservation of the existing character of a historic site. I believe Mr. Cypress would like to speak on that.
Should we take a 2-minute recess?
Let them all kind
Fine, man.
of make a motion.
I don't know.
I make a motion to take a 2-minute recess.
Yeah.
need
I
water.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was saying I need water.
Yeah, I make a motion to go back into work session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we left it off with the discussion on Chapter 83.
Yep, so I'd like to make two small changes to Chapter 83. For a little background, last year, the Historic Sites Commission had an application for a project. They received the application. A few weeks later, the applicant and them reviewed the project, and then they were planning on voting at the next meeting. And as it turned out, a project is considered approved automatically if action's not taken in 45 days. And 45 days isn't enough time to get through 2 meetings.
Okay.
So the two small changes that I circulated was to change 45 to 60 and to add a complete in front of application. So it will say within 60 days after a complete application has been made, et cetera. So any comments on that change? Otherwise, I'd like to
No, sir?
No,
Nope.
move
sir.
that
Makes lots
forward.
of sense.
So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Our second discussion today is from the Board of Directors of the Cultural Arts Coalition update. Maybe they left?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I never saw him.
Yeah.
I never saw anybody.
Okay, so we're gonna, since no one's here, we're gonna move forward. Our next discussion is Kayla Corvino, Let's Play Project, Brewster Central School District. And, oh, look, she's bringing Jarrett with her. Jarrett the Iceman. Oh, okay, great. Come on up. Can I help this up? Yeah, it's right there.
Which one would you like,
Oh,
sir?
he's already in. Look at him.
Did you need I got these.
Okay, excellent.
Which one would you like to start with?
Well, I think that would be up to,
Well, just, if you guys could all introduce yourselves so that it's on video.
all right.
We do know you, but.
Yeah, all right. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Jared, and I'm the new Director of Parks and Recreation for the town of Southeast. And I'm here today because recently I was approached by Kayla Corvino and Jamie Dini. I had to write down her last name on my hand. About doing a project at one of our parks. And basically, they kind of recounted to me a story about two children who were on the playground, I believe at Castle Park, and they were unable to communicate with each other because of a language barrier. And they wanted to play together, but there was a little bit of, like I said, there was a language barrier, and the game they were trying to play, they weren't able to adequately communicate how it should be played. And they came up with the idea to put some signage up that would show different playground games in a variety of different languages, so that way children who might speak one language or another would still be able to play with one another. I thought it was a really cool idea, and they came in and we discussed it further, or we did a Zoom, I think, and I asked them if they'd like to present it to the board. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I thought it would be a really good idea for people to see us working together. So Kayla and Jamie, they're both employees of the Brewster Central School District, and so I thought it'd be a really cool show for them to be here today with us, with the town, showing us kind of different organizations working together. And basically, I'm going to let them present what they want to do, but I think it's going to be fantastic, and it's definitely going to be a great addition to Castle Park, which, I mean, you guys have all seen it, obviously, and Kathy, you were a part of bringing it to the park. It's absolutely phenomenal, and I think having something like this there for our diverse community would be an absolute home run. So I'm going to turn it over to Kayla and Jamie and let them make this presentation, and then we'll take questions from all of the people in the audience today, if you have any.
Thank you, Joe.
So I'm Kayla Corvino. I am a social studies teacher at Brewster High School. And then what you have up is our one-pager, because we need to use teacher terms. So if you want to go to the PowerPoint, I have to be a teacher and hand out like the papers. So I made you a little cute like one page, like in case you want to like talk to somebody about it. So
I think we actually have it, right?
One page may be better for us.
I'll do it like I do with my students.
Are you saying something?
Thank you.
I'm insulted.
Actually, we have it, right?
You have
This is colored though, thank you very much.
We don't use color ink here.
Yeah, the school's got a lot of money.
You're good.
Thank you, Kayla. So I am Jamie Dini. I'm the ELL and bilingual coordinator for the district. So when we thought about this project, we thought how we can get all of our students involved. Can we go to the next slide? I feel bad asking you to click for us. So as Jared kind of touched on it, we wanted to talk about our why. So we're looking at our community, we're looking at the changes in our community and meeting the needs of our students. So we've kind of come together, we've had Vision 2026, we've had conversations about our profile of a graduate, and one of those things is demonstrating civic responsibility. So while we were thinking about that and building our profile, a member of our community identified that children were having difficulty, member of our community right here. So like Jared mentioned, they were at the playground together, they kept trying to play together, but they didn't speak the same language, they weren't able to communicate to play that game together. So we wanted to make sure that we could step up, our students could step up and help kids be able to bridge that barrier and be able to communicate and play together and create this overall sense of community where everyone belongs. Next slide.
I think when she stops talking, you gotta.
I wasn't sure.
I know. I hate asking people to do it for me.
I know.
I'm gonna sense the next one.
And so our mission really is to foster inclusive play. We know that a lot of playgrounds are starting to adapt for different physical ability levels, and our thought process is why not language too, both spoken and unspoken. So part of this will be also a American Sign Language inclusive. So it's not just verbal languages, but now we're trying to get everybody involved.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So our community member brought this to us and we said, okay, we have these high school students, we have this profile of the graduate, civic readiness, what can we do here? So we approached actually one of our English language learner class because we thought this would be a great opportunity for them to build language, get involved with their community. So we worked with another teacher, her name is Paula Richardson, who works within our E&L program. She's fantastic. So we worked with the students and kind of presented them this project, and we came up with this idea of taking our high school students to go into our elementary schools, JFK and CV Star, to talk to the kids about what they like to play. I mean, my games are probably different than what they're playing now, and even now, the high schoolers' games are probably different what the kids are playing now as well. So the students did an awesome job of creating these different types of interview questions. We went into the different schools, met with different grade levels, different populations, and talked to all of them about what they like to play on the playground.
The design.
Yeah.
All right, so this is where I jump back in. So I'm the community
I have
member.
a question.
Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned English speaking classes where I kind of missed what you were saying about the class.
Yes,
That's
we
okay.
have lots of acronyms, so I apologize if
Yeah.
I just used it. So my role is the English language learner and bilingual program. So we took a class at the high school that is learning English. So these are some students who either just arrived or have been here a couple of years, they're developing their English. So they did all of this project in English. So
Oh,
this
great.
was a great way for
Okay,
them
yeah,
to develop their
okay.
skills while working with the community. Thank you
So
for...
you just glossed right over
I
that.
did, I'm sorry. All the acronyms, and it
I know.
changes every year, and yeah.
And we're not used to being out like in public,
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
to normal human beings. It's very true. Like they hide us away with other people. So this is where it jumps back in. I'm kind of the background person to this because my kids live at Castle Park. I basically live at Castle Park. And I noticed that my son kept trying to play with all of these different kids, but everybody speaks a different language. And while they get it, and Gaga is Gaga, which if you don't know what Gaga ball is, I think a podiatrist made it because he wants to kill my ankles. But they were trying to figure it out, and I was like, well, that's great. They're figuring it out, but my brain doesn't work like that. How can I start to figure it out? So I brought this to Jamie, and I was like, I need help more than the little kids do because they were figuring it out. And we decided a sign would be perfect, right? So we can show different languages, and then Jamie was like, well, we need multiple languages. So okay, but now we need a sign and a QR code. So we have reached out to our foreign language department, as well as some other students in Brewster High School, and now this is not just Spanish, English, and American Sign Language, but it's also French, Albanian, Mandarin,
Italian.
And I think that's it for right now.
Yes, we can always add more.
We can always add more because we are going to be creating a website. So that QR code will bring you to the website that we just created. And not only will it be written, but students will also be creating the videos for it so you can hear the languages. So we have some AP art students that are creating the poster for us. We have a great sign company that said that they're going to print the poster, so it'll be a nice metal poster. It'll last about 10 years. And hopefully it'll start in the schools. So we'll have 2 in the schools, 1 at Castle Park, and maybe get it even further into more parks.
Expansion? Question mark?
Oh, yeah.
So we wouldn't be teachers if we didn't show you our students actually doing the work. So this is the class that Jamie was just talking to you about, starting to create those questions, having open questions and closed questions, learning English, and how to interview other people.
And then here we went to visit our JFK students. You can see that our high school students brought their questions. They sat down with the kids and really had a chance to sit and talk to them. This was an opportunity for them to be role models and get the information they need for the community. The kids were so excited to have high schoolers come into their class. It's like celebrities.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it was a great opportunity. Oh, sorry, just skip that one.
Yeah. We hope to get to CV Star by now, but the weather has not been nice enough for us to walk all the way up to CV Star from the high school, so we're waiting for a nicer day. But we really hope that this is just the beginning, that this is kind of like a pilot program. We can get into all of the parks, hopefully, eventually, but we thought we'd just let you know what's going on. The QR code brings you to the Brewster site that we're creating, and hopefully in a week or two, we'll have some videos starting to pop up there for you.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
you know, you're dealing with Jared, so Jared keeps us in the loop. So hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being patient.
Yes.
Nice
Yes.
meeting.
Had to be a little fun.
Can I just follow up real quick? So yeah, just to follow up. So once the sign is ready, our staff will be installing the signs at the park in what we deem to be the most optimal location. And, you know, hopefully we'll, you know, be able to make that a little ceremony of sorts. And once again, to really show, you know, the efforts that both of our organizations are coming together to do for the community. So I just also wanted to speak one more time just to thank Kayla and Jamie for taking this on, for putting so much work into it. And once again, for coming to the town of Southeast, to Parks and Rec, to be a part of this, because it's something, you know, super cutting edge, if you will. It's not something I ever really even thought about. So it's really kind of, you know, it's new and exciting, and to be a part of that is awesome. So thank you guys for, you know, including us. And, you know, as you move forward, if there's any way we can continue to be involved as this grows, you know, certainly let us know, because we obviously plan on continuing to improve and renovate all our parks. And if we can include something like this as we build new facilities, I think it would only be great. So just wanted to conclude with that.
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks,
Hey,
Jared.
Thank you. Can you show us the location so all of us can give you different opinions?
Well, no, not there.
I'll let you know once it's already in the ground. And then
Yeah, best bet, yeah.
Thank you again. Okay, so we are to our resolutions.
Yes. Yes. You have to make a motion to go into regular meeting.
Oh, you're right, I apologize. I make a motion to go into our regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'd also like to make a motion to set a public hearing for Caramount Highlands Special Permit, May 9th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number two, I also make a motion to set a public hearing to changes to Chapter 83 Historic Sites, April 25th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So that brings us to our first resolution of the night. It's a special permit request from Barn Dog Farm, 96-108 Hickory Ridge Road, tax map ID 80.1-31. It's a little bit long. Hang in there with me, please. Now therefore, be it resolved that based upon all the documentary submissions and testimony elicited at the public hearing on this matter, the town board of the town of Southeast hereby makes the following findings and facts in connection with the instant application. 1, the proposed use is in such location and in a size and character that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding district and will not be detrimental to the immediate site or adjacent properties. 2, the location of the size of the proposed use, the nature and intensity of operations involved in or conducted in connection therewith, its site layout and its relation to access streets will be such that both pedestrian and vehicular traffic to and from the use and the assembly of persons in connection therewith will not be hazardous. 3, the proposed exterior appearance of the buildings will not hinder or discourage the development and use of adjacent land and buildings. 4, the proposed use will not require such additional public facilities or services or create fiscal burdens upon the town greater than those which characterize uses permitted as of right. And be it further resolved that based on the foregoing findings, submissions, and representations by the applicants and its professional advisors, the town board of the town of Southeast hereby grants a special permit to Barn Dog LLC to permit the establishment and operation of an equestrian center on the subject premise 96-108 Hickory Ridge Road, which is also, for some reason, 50 Ridgeberry Road, in accordance with the statement of use and project description prepared and submitted to the planning board in connection with the project development plan application on the following conditions. Number one, the applicant shall return to the planning board for final site project development plan approval and shall construct and operate the facility in the compliance with all general and special conditions set forth in section 138-68 of the zoning code, together with any additional special conditions set forth herein. Number two, before any certificate of occupancy compliance shall be issued for the facilities proposed herein, all stables shall be equipped with an operating central station smoke, heat, and fire alarm system, which shall sound on the audible alarm and provide direct telephone connection to a central station for communication with local fire rescue services. 3, before any certificate of occupancy compliance shall be issued for the proposed 2-story maintenance residential building containing 3 upper floor apartments, the applicant shall install an NFPA-approved automatic fire sprinkler system in the structure. In addition, the applicant shall install a fire cistern on the subject premise with a minimum of 30,000-gallon capacity for use by the local fire service in connection with the fire suppression efforts. All applicant shall improve Ridgeberry Road by including a cul-de-sac at the point applicant purposes to construct a gate restricting access beyond the cul-de-sac, and improve the roadbed of Ridgeberry Road to the point of proposed entry into the subject's premise. All construction and improvements with the established right-of-way of Ridgeberry Road shall be constructed according to the plans approved by the highway superintendent of the town of Southeast and the town's engineering consulting. The use of the improvement of Ridgeberry Road by the applicant shall be subject to a non-exclusive terminable easement, granted to the town in favor of the applicant over, through and upon the mapped portions of Ridgeberry Road and depicted on the drawing entitled Site Plan Ridgeberry Road Revised 2/5/24, Sheet C7, as approved by the town attorney. The applicant assumes and shall be solely responsible for keeping and maintaining the portion of Ridgeberry Road from the proposed cul-de-sac to the front of the entry to the subject's premise. The town highway superintendent and landowners abutting the gated portion of Ridgeberry Road shall be permitted to access to such gated portion of Ridgeberry Road. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized and directed to forward a certified copy of the resolution to Old Town Barns and Han Engineering, representatives of Barn Dog LLC, the Planning Board, and the Southeast Building and Highway Departments, forthwith. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I need to make a motion to waive the rules to allow 9 resolution items to be considered.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I believe, Wendy, you have 2. You want to go ahead with yours?
Yep.
Thank you.
The first resolution I have here is to authorize termination of contract with H2O Innovation Operation and Maintenance LLC. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast hereby authorizes the early termination of the contract between the town and H2O Innovation Operation and Maintenance LLC, dated as of June 1st, 2022, effective April 30th, 2024, and hereby authorizes the town supervisor to execute and deliver a certain early termination agreement governing the terms and condition of the early termination, including the rights and responsibilities of the parties to and through the effective date of April 30th, 2024, in form, substance, and manner of execution approved by the town attorney. So moved.
Second.
The second one I have is, all in favor?
Aye.
The second I have is Water and Sewer District, O&M Contract Award, VRI Environmental Services. Now therefore it be resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Southeast hereby accepts the proposal of VRI Environmental Services Incorporated to provide operation and maintenance services to the town's water and sewer special districts, and hereby authorizes the supervisor to execute a contract with VRI to commence and take effect as of May 1st, 2024, for a term of 3 years in the form and manner of execution satisfactory to the town attorney. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Wendy. I have a few more resolutions from the settlement of Shatori proceedings, Three Star Ridge LLC, tax map number 68.2-1.200 and -201. Therefore, be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendation of its professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent, judgment, and/or order on consent in accordance with said recommendations for the following: Three Star Ridge LLC, tax ID 68.2-1.200, year 2023, assessment $735,500. Settled assessment is $559,400. The second tax ID is 68.2-1.201, year 2023. Assessment was $216,200. The settled assessment is $150,000. And be it further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute all stipulations, consent orders, and/or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next, therefore be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendation of its professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute stipulation of the settlement, consent, judgment, and/or order on consent in accordance with the said recommendations for the following tax ID. It's IMW Realty LLC, tax ID number 68.2-1.203, year 2023. Assessment was $377,400. Settled assessment is $276,250. And be it further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So be it. So moved, I'm sorry.
Second.
I'm getting a little lost, sorry. Resolved.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendations of its professional advisors and authorize the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent, judgment, or order on consent in accordance with the recommendations for the following: PJJ Holdings LLC, 68.2-1.102, year 2023. Assessment $292,700. Settled assessment was $225,000. And be it further resolved, the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute all stipulations, consent orders, and/or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendation of its professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent, judgment, and/or consent in accordance with the said recommendations for the following: 10-9 Holdings LLC, tax ID 68.2-1.201, year
202.
202, year 2023. assessment is $168,100. The settled assessment was $125,840. And be it further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute all stipulations, consent orders, and other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendation of its professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent, judgment, and/or order on consent in accordance with the recommendations for the following: GJMR Holdings, LLC, tax ID 68.2-1.203, year 2023. Assessment was $168,100. The settled assessment was $118,040. Be it further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute all stipulations, consent orders, and other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So moved.
Second.
There's only two more.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendation of its professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent, judgment, or order on consent in accordance with the said recommendations for the following: Katie Star LLC, tax ID number 68.1-1-2-1-100, year 2023. Assessment was $549,900. The settled assessment was $326,500. The second tax ID for KD Star is 68.2-1.101, year 2023. Assessment was $549,900. The settled assessment was $326,500. Be it further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized to directed to execute all stipulations, consent orders, and other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Therefore, be it resolved that the town board in the town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendation of its professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent, judgment, and/or order on consent in accordance with said recommendations for the following: Star Ridge Office Building LLC, tax ID 68.2-1.204, year 2023. Assessment was $323,100. The settled assessment was $276,500. And be it further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that concludes our regular meeting. I guess we can open the floor if there are any comments from the public. All right, no comments from the public, thank you. Does anybody from the board have any comments?
Nope.
No. No comments.
I make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for being here.